why spirituality is making you depressed. At the start of the journey, this seems preposterous because this is usually when you're just discovering this stuff. And this could be about meditation, Buddhism, maybe you go deeper into religion, God, psychedelics, lucid dreaming, whatever awakening really means to you. But to me, when I talk about awakening and spirituality, at least in the beginning phase, is really about becoming conscious. You're realizing your own limitations and illusions in your life, and you kind of start breaking out of these habitual patterns, and you start to question the things that were taught to you your whole life. And at the start, it can kind of go both ways. For some people, it can be a very adventurous phase where you're just like discovering new things. You go on this epic quest, meeting new people, discovering new ideologies. And it can be exciting, man, for sure. And for other people, it can be very disheartening. And you kind of go through this existential crisis where you realize that the world is really, really messed up, and there's some dark demonic stuff going on in the underworld, and which is kind of taking control of this modern society and kind of bleeding through pop culture and music and the food and all these kind of things. And it can be very disheartening. I'll just say it again. And sometimes on the spiritual path, many times, especially when you go down the new age path of non-duality, meditation, detachment, raising your frequency, staying away from low vibrational people. When you really go down this path, eventually, I feel like it bites you in the ass, man, because you end up growing this spiritual ego. And by the way, I don't want to just say you and just point the finger, because as soon as you point a finger, three more is pointing back at me. So I am speaking from experience, direct experience, and also from observations of just what I've seen. I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of spiritual teachers and gurus and influencers in this space, and unfortunately, most of them are full of caca. It's just the way it is. And you got to be vigilant when it comes to this path, because a lot of people who are teaching spirituality, and again, this goes back to myself, and this is why I always got to remind myself and consciously humble myself and remind myself that, hey, I'm not this perfect spiritual being that is all knowledgeable. I have serious limitations, and what I believe now might not be the case in a year's time from now, 5 years time from now. So I always got to kind of keep that in my periphery. And there are many teachers who go down this path who end up building a very strong spiritual ego. And this can happen a lot. Even ironically, like for example, with psychedelics, you think that it dissolves your ego and that it removes these things. But most times I would even argue, at least the way that most people do them, because context is everything, right? And this is that your ego can come back even stronger, because you've dissolved your ego, you've received this great knowledge, and now you think you have something that no one else has. And then you consciously or unconsciously judge people who haven't had these type of experiences. And it doesn't even have to be psychedelics, but just spiritual experiences, whatever that means to you. To me, spiritual has a very different meaning now to what I thought it meant when I started. Because when I first started, to me, it was all about the higher planes of existence, right? And you can access these through lucid dreaming, astral projection, psychedelics is one, and all these kind of ethereal practices. And that this physical body it's just an illusion, right? This doesn't really matter. It's Maya. It's all Maya. Doesn't even exist. You're not even real, right? And I think that deep down, the reason why we get attracted to these philosophies, it's not that this life is an illusion, because it's not. In fact, the spiritual dimension is a direct reflection of that which is most highest. As above, so below. This is the spiritual dimension. There is a reason why we're here. There is a reason why this is baseline reality. And there is a reason why this is the only reality that every single human being on the planet, no matter what your philosophy is on life, can agree with, right? That we're human beings having an experience, walking this earth. And so when you go down this path of non-attachment, especially when you really take it far, and I think that deep down, the underlying issue is that this is the way I think about it. Imagine if suffering didn't exist. Imagine if really dark, vile acts didn't exist. If there weren't evil people doing bad stuff. Imagine if all this stuff didn't exist and life was nothing but rainbow, sunshine, and lollipops. And we're frolicking in the field with unicorns and the shit ice cream, vegan ice cream, with all the flavors of the rainbow. And everything was handed to you on a platter and nothing bad ever happened. Do you really, really think that if this reality existed, and this was the baseline reality, that there would be a human being on earth that would even think for a second that this is all an illusion? And they would want to dissolve their ego and go to a different dimension? No. The answer is no, of course not. The reason why so many people on this path get attracted to this life is an illusion, let's just detach from this whole thing and dissolve our egos, it's because deep down they can't deal with the suffering. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way, like, what a puss, this guy can't even handle it. No, reality is hard, man. It's like literally hard, as in it's dense, but it's very difficult. And there are unfathomable amount of evil, pain, and suffering, and just evil, vile people on this planet doing unspeakable acts. Things that you and I couldn't even imagine. I mean, we could watch a YouTube video about some conspiracy theories, but the reality is probably a lot darker, and which I'm not even going to get into. I'm sure many of you have at least been aware of one or two of these things. And then on top of that, not even like scratch the evil people, just the fact that we're in a mortal body and that we have to die, and that every single person that we love and know in our life will die. And yeah, I mean, you can take the spiritual perspective of, okay, your consciousness never dies, you just pass on to another plane, and that could be true. I mean, personally, I haven't died, so I can't confirm that with utmost confidence. You know, I've had at least what I think is a simulated death, but this is something else that we need to distinguish between. There is a big difference between a direct experience and the interpretation of that experience. Because you may have an experience of dying and your ego goes, oh yeah, I died. I went to the death plane. I went to the spirit realm. But is that the truth, or is that just your ego rationalizing what happened? Because the truth of the matter is that you had a sensory experience of something, and then the ego comes in and tries to fill in the gaps. And it could be true, might not be true, but again, I can't say with utmost confidence of what happens after you die. All I know is at least the ego self, right? Tom is going to die. I don't think there will be another time in this existence where I'll have this same experience. I think it's a unique blueprint. But, you know, again, that's just my belief, isn't it? But what I'm trying to say is that you don't know what's going to happen. And the human journey is tough. Even if you're one of those lucky people who've been dealt a very nice hand, right? Where you're privileged, you've got all the money that you need, you're good friends, you're living your passion, you're serving your highest purpose. But even then, it's all going to be taken away from you eventually. We're going to have to come across Lady Death. And probably be in some of us are going to go in a lot of physical pain. Maybe some of us are lucky and you go in your sleep. That's the way I wish. You know, I wish that I can, when it is my time to go, that it's within my sleep and I can go with my girlfriend at the same time. Or my wife at that stage. But the reason why people get spiritually depressed, and some people could even call it the dark night of the soul, and God knows that I've been through this visceral process, man, of just really almost regretting, as if I had a choice, but it's kind of the best word. The best word that I can use at this very moment is that it's like I regretted coming into this human existence, because like no matter how great things are, eventually I'm gonna suffer and die alone. Even if you're with your family, you still come into this life alone. You die alone. But really, of course, after you go through the whole, dark night of the soul, my connection got severed with God. I wrote a poem about this if you want to check that out. But sometimes it can be a blessing to go through these experiences, because when your connection with Source gets severed, then it puts your priorities in order, and it really makes you realize what's important. And yeah, I was very depressed, but not even on a physical low serotonin kind of depressed, like the depression that we think of in Western society. I'm talking about a real spiritual dark night of the soul depression, which is a whole other level, because I've been very depressed, suicidally depressed when I was in my teens. And I always thought, like, you know what? If things go really bad, at least I can kill myself. I kind of found it in a really messed up way. I found solace in that. Is that if things went really bad, at least I can just check out. Press the off switch on this game of life. Because I don't want to play anymore. It's too hard. I just can't get past this boss battle right now. But with spiritual depression, you realize that life is a lot more vast than just the individual game that you're playing. It connects to the collective. And even if you kill yourself, you're just going to come back. And if you kill yourself, you're probably going to get, I don't want to use the word, but again, this is just what I've been going through, so you can take it or leave it. But I felt like if I killed myself, not only would I come back to this life for all eternity, but I'd come back and I'd be dealt an even worse hand. Like I'd get punished for it because I'm giving in to that demonic thought. And I just couldn't do that to my family, and it's tough. And I haven't dealt with that for, I just want to I'm telling you this, I'm being vulnerable and sharing these really dark thoughts and this experience that I had, because it's almost like, I don't want to say I can't relate to it, because it happened to me. I can just travel back in time and really try to feel what it felt like, but it's not even a part of my being anymore. Life is incredible. It's amazing. And when you really harmonize the humanness, the physical dimension with the spiritual stuff, right? It goes hand in hand, harmony. It's not that you need to let go of the physical stuff and only serve the spiritual stuff, because I think that's a trap. I think it's rooted in our denial of dealing with reality. And it perpetuates this shadow backlash, because if you deny the ego, man, the ego is going to come back bigger and stronger, and it's going to backlash, man. You got to treat the shadow almost like a child throwing a tantrum. You think if a child imagine if it was your kid, screaming, kicking, crying, and then all you did was just completely ignore it for the rest of your life because it's just an illusion. Imagine the psychological damage that would do. Because I can tell you, it's a lot. And this is why a lot of spiritual teachers end up being the most messed up people on the planet. Because remember, it's easy for me to turn on the camera and just, hi everybody. I just meditated today and I thought that I'm so spiritual. And it's easy for me to sound spiritual because I can just put on this voice, especially when I put that record button, and choose my words carefully, write a script, edit this video if I blunder anything, and be connected with God because I know the truth. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to put on that front. And it's very difficult to find someone who's actually living their truth. And I'm not saying this just to crap on people. It's to tell you the truth. I say this because I care about you guys. And I'm not saying that, even that sounds corny, because I know that when a lot of people say that, they're full of crap, but I truly mean it, man. I really care about you. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cut this out, because there's no way of saying that without sounding like a douchebag. But I really do care, at least. I'll just say I'll care about telling the truth. And I don't want people going down this dark path, especially following spiritual teachers just because they have like an Indian third eye dot on their forehead and wear a special orange robe. Like, it's easy. You don't understand. Like, man, if I could easily just put on that front, be a new age spiritual teacher, and probably make millions, man. Start a cult, do it. I know exactly what to say because I understand the psychology behind it, but I can't do it. I can't bring myself to do it, because I think in the long term, lying, not telling the truth, not being authentic is going to bite you in the ass big time. My camera overheated, so I'm going to continue the video on my phone. It can be very difficult to really live your authentic path, and I can understand the ordeal when it comes to dealing with human suffering. I do. And I completely understand and I empathize with people who do want to detach from this reality, because it's too much, right? So I'm not coming at this from a harden up, bloody deal with reality, because there's also, it's like even in Buddhism, it talks about the middle path, and I don't know if it talks about this specific point, which I'm about to make, but I think when it comes to the physical and the spiritual, remember that these harmonize with each other. And sometimes I get it, being too stuck in the physical and completely ignoring source and God, that can be catastrophic as well. Being a materialist, that has its own set of problems. But life is sort of like a bell curve, right? It's not a straight line. It's not that the more spiritual you go, the more things are going to go fine and dandy, and the more physical you go, the more towards hell you're going to go. No. Again, it's like a bell curve, right? So if you go too far into the spiritual, there's a certain point where you go, if you're like materialistic, then yeah, you should go more spiritual. But then if you go way too much and you detach from the physical, now you're back here at a low point. And if you're here and you're really spiritual, then I would highly recommend going more towards the physical. But then if you go too far and you're a materialist atheist here, you're probably going to be miserable. And I don't mean that to hurt the feelings of atheists who are watching this, but I'm talking about the nihilistic realm, right? That's I feel like that's the extreme form of materialism, where you believe that the universe is just a meaningless, vast abyss. There is no purpose. There is no meaning. Humans are just biological machines designed, or not even designed, because they don't believe in a designer, that are just here by accident, that are just meant to eat shit and procreate. And that's it. We live just to die and suffer. That can go too far. So it kind of depends where you're at. But when I see, so if you're like too here and you're too detached and you're too much in the spiritual dimension and you're like kind of floating too close to the sun, like that classic story of Icarus, right? He flew too high, man. And the sun, the heat of the sun ended up burning his wings off, and he crashed. And it's an eventuality, man. But when I say go more physical, it's really honoring the physical, honoring the human life, honoring Earth, honoring science too, which is really a study of nature. But anyways, I would say if you are stuck in this sort of mentality, then I would really not try to avoid reality as it is. Like, sometimes it could be a good practice even going into the city, going in the midst of chaos and really connecting with city normal folk, speaking with people from all walks of life, and not just staying in your own echo chamber and only speaking to people who agree with you. I think that's a very, very dangerous trap. I think it's good at least every once in a while to explore, break your boundaries and speak to someone who's like completely on the opposite spectrum to you. And that could be in real life, could be on YouTube, but really try to have empathy in that way. Because it's easy to have empathy for, let's say, the animals and for the earth to get destroyed, but then you have zero empathy for people who are destroying the earth. they're humans too, man. And if you just cut them out, they're just gonna grow into uglier monsters. So you gotta. And listen, I get it. Usually, with the more wisdom that you get, the more heartache you get from this world, right? And the more empathy you have, of course, the more it's gonna hurt seeing people in suffering and the way that we treat each other. But sometimes when you have too much empathy and you're just in this suffering mode, feeling sorry for humans, that can just, in a way, it's a form of spiritual masturbation, because how's that helping anyone? All right, cool, you're suffering and you're feeling for people. Cool, that makes you so spiritual. But does it? I got stuck in this place for a long time, man, and all it does is perpetuate the suffering, and it doesn't help. It's like you got to feel, but also be detached in a certain. Again, it's the middle path. You don't want to be so detached where you're a monster and you don't care about humans, but you don't want to be so overly empathetic that you can't even do anything because the suffering has overtaken you, because it's too much. It's a balance. The balance of life, the circle of life. So all in all, face your shadow, which includes the spiritual ego. Honor the sacredness of the physical world if you're stuck too much in the spiritual. And if you're too stuck in materialism, honor the spiritual. Again, everything's context at the end of the day. That's why when it comes to spirituality, religion, self-development, psychology, it's not as simple as just giving one advice that fits everyone's life. There are some certain principles that definitely fit to everyone, like drink sufficient water, spend time in nature. I think that's good advice for everybody. Tell the truth. Don't lie. So there definitely are, like, you can call them commandments that apply to everyone, no matter what stage of the hero's journey you're at. But then there are certain nuanced things that we need to consider. And sometimes it can differ it depends on where you are on the scale of life. But we're all humans, we're all trying to do the best that we can. So I'm going to say the hippie thing here and just say, love each other, man. Have more empathy. But empathy for everybody. Don't just have select empathy. Have empathy even for the monsters. Don't get too caught up in being on the spiritual journey and being better than everyone else and having a spiritual ego that's just through the roof and thinking that you have knowledge that other people don't. And I get it, because listen, deep down we want to have a purpose. We want an identification. We want to serve our highest purpose and find our place in the world. It's how we are designed. It's just the way it is. You just got to be aware on how you're fulfilling your purpose and really embodying something that is true for you, like really true for you, and not just attaching your ego to these identifications because it just so happened to cross your path and it just resonated with you at the time. Sometimes things change and you got to constantly challenge these things and see what sticks, because the truth is always going to say the truth, no matter what angle you look at it through. But you got to test it every once in a while. And again, you don't want to be overly skeptic where you just smashing statues left, right, and center and don't have any ideology and you just, nothing. You can't really know the truth at all. Nothing's true, right? But also you don't want to be on the other side of the spectrum where you resonate with one little thing and then you just identify with it for life and you never question it again. The middle path, I guess. I don't even know if you want to call it the middle path, but I'm just going to use that terminology for now because I can't think of anything better. But yeah, wishing you guys all the best. I made a few videos on the hero's journey, on the dark side of the immature hero archetype, the bipolar shadow. And I'll be continuing making these sort of videos. I thought it's been a while since I've had a raw chat with you guys. I'm going to be focusing more on this channel because I think it's important to explore these topics of psychology, spirituality, philosophy, religion. I think it's all fascinating stuff that I'm going real deep into, and hopefully I can share a thing or two that may potentially help you on your journey. And if you want to hear about anything specifically. Like if you're struggling with anything along this journey, then please let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to do my best to help you out in any way that I can, if I can, you know. So yeah. Anyways, much love, guys. Make sure to subscribe, like, and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.